With the NBA draft upon us, I thought I would reminisce with my top 10 favorite moments of all time. So here's to the coin flips, frozen envelopes, and wearing the wrong team's hat on draft night. Number 10. The 1960 NBA draft featured Oscar Robertson, Jerry West, the logo himself, Lenny Wilkins, and Tom Satch Sanders. Now, this was the 14th annual draft, and they had something called territorial picks at the time. So the Cincinnati Royals, now the Sacramento Kings, they gave up their first round pick for Oscar Robertson, who played for Cincinnati. If a player was within a 50-mile radius of where a team played, the team who gave up their pick could basically just claim that they were on the team, whether they wanted to sign with them or not. The Big O went on to have a Hall of Fame career along with the other three names I mentioned. Pretty great draft class. Number 9, the 92 and 93 draft. So in 92, everything changed when the Orlando Magic won the lottery and picked Shaquille O'Neal. We all know Shaq went on to be a Hall of Famer and win 4 championships, but then next year, the Magic would get the lottery again by way of picking Chris Webber, trading him to Golden State on draft night for Penny Hardaway, thus making the dynamic duo of Shaq and Penny. This duo would make it to the finals, but they never won a championship together. Number 8, the 1970 NBA draft. Low-key the deepest draft class, and we're gonna get to the 96 draft soon, but 1970 had Pistol Pete, Dave Cowens, Calvin Murphy, Nate Tiny Archibald, and Bob Lanier. Lanier being the first overall pick by the Pistons. This draft was also notable as being the first coin flip draft in history, where the 2 last place teams from each conference would flip a coin to see who went first. Number 7, the 2001 NBA draft, otherwise known as the Kwame Brown draft. Kwame Brown was picked first overall, and Pau Gasol was picked 3rd overall by Atlanta, but then immediately traded to the Grizzlies. Gasol became the first non-American player to win the Rookie of the Year award. This class also featured fellow Hall of Famer Tony Parker and the legendary White Mamba Brian Scalabrine. Not a Hall of Famer, but the guy's a legend in Boston, still does the commentary for the Celtics games, and he won a championship in 2008. At number 6, the 1980 NBA draft. My Boston Celtics would pick Kevin McHale from the University of Minnesota, and he would go on to be a Hall of Famer. The Boston Celtics would select Kevin McHale with the 3rd pick, and then they traded the 1st and 13th picks to Golden State for Robert Parrish. Special shout out from this draft goes to Kurt Rambis, fellow Santa Clara Bronco alum. He was selected 58th overall by the New York Knicks. Anytime I can get a Santa Clara shout out in a video, I will do it. Go Broncos. Coming in at number 5, the 1997 NBA draft. This was the Tim Duncan lottery, and as an 11-year-old, I thought Tim Duncan was definitely coming to Boston, but that's not how the ping pong balls came out. The San Antonio Spurs ended up picking Duncan 1st overall, and by adding Duncan to the roster with David Robinson, Sean Elliott, and Greg Popovich at the helm, the Spurs would go on to become a dynasty. After losing in the 2nd round of the playoffs in Duncan's rookie season, the Spurs won their first ever championship in 1999. San Antonio would win 4 more championships before Duncan retired. And this year, all signs, including billboards in Texas, point to the Spurs landing the French superstar Victor Wembanyama with the 1st overall pick. Could that mean the beginning of another dynasty in San Antonio? Coming in at number 4, the 1996 NBA draft and draft class, which I think hands down was the deepest we've ever seen. You had AI going number 1 to the Sixers, Kobe going 13 to the Hornets and then getting traded to the Lakers, and at number 15, another shout out to Santa Clara legend and Hall of Famer Steve Nash. Up until last season, Nash was the highest drafted Santa Clara player ever until Jalen Williams went 12 to the Thunder. But those weren't the only notable players in the 96 draft class. Just to name a few more, it also featured Ray Allen, Sharif Abdur-Rahim, Antoine Walker, who we all loved and or hated in Boston, and Zydrunas Ilgauskas, one of the coolest names in basketball ever. This is less of a moment and more of an era-defining draft class. The draft night trade of Kobe to the Lakers will go down in history as the biggest deal in NBA draft history, next to Bill Russell being traded to Boston for Cliff Hagan and Ed McCauley in 1956. At number 3, the 1985 draft and the frozen envelope incident. This draft had the New York Knicks winning the first ever draft lottery, and before ping pong balls, you had envelopes. This event sparked conspiracy theories due to the suspicious frozen envelope. There's a whole rabbit hole we could go down to talk about the frozen envelope conspiracy and how David Stern and the NBA wanted to make sure Patrick Ewing went to the Knicks to balance the power, or I don't know what they wanted to do with that. But Patrick Ewing in the first draft lottery going to the Knicks, that was a big deal. At number 2, the 2003 draft class, which you could argue was more talented than the 96 draft class, maybe just not as deep. This draft class produced superstars such as LeBron James with the first pick to Cleveland. He's now, of course, the scoring leader in the NBA all time. Then you had Carmelo Anthony going 3 to the Nuggets, Chris Bosh going 4 to the Raptors, and D Wade going 5 to the Heat. We'll just glaze over the fact that Detroit didn't pick any of these guys at number 2. And my number 1 NBA draft moment is the 1984 NBA draft. Hakeem Olajuwon went first, Sam Bowie went to Portland second, and then some guy named Mike Jordan went to the Bulls third. The important thing about the 84 draft is that it happened right before the Olympics, where Michael Jordan was on display for the world to see that he was clearly the greatest basketball player of all time. Had Michael Jordan been drafted in the era of social media and more television, or had the draft just happened after the Olympics, he may have not ended up on the Bulls. And that would be super weird. Thinking about Michael Jordan in any other uniform, even though he did play for the Wizards, is just super weird to think about. Side note about Olajuwon. He's the reason the draft lottery exists and happened just the year after with Patrick Ewing. There was a worry that teams were tanking to select the all-world center Hakeem Olajuwon in '84, and therefore a draft lottery system was implemented to try to ensure honest competition. We still see teams kind of tanking or taking nights off to improve their lottery position, but the lottery helped that you couldn't guarantee get the first pick. All right, that's it for me. Top 10 NBA draft moments. Which one was yours? Did I leave one out? Let me know in the comments below, and we'll see you next time. Peace.